Hi, welcome. I'm Dr. Tiffany Denny, and recently I had a request for a practice that you might be able to do if you are in a knee immobilizer. So, right after knee surgery, especially for surgeries like ACL reconstructions, meniscal repairs or transplants, patellar fractures, patellar quad tendon repairs. Like there's certain surgeries specifically where, and really for a lot of knee surgeries in general, you'll wear a knee immobilizer for a certain amount of time. Some of them you're wearing that knee immobilizer a lot, and some of them you wear so that when you get up and try and walk with your crutches, your knee doesn't buckle, right? So there's that. And for a lot of knee surgeries, when you're practicing, you could theoretically take off your knee immobilizer. That would be at the direction of your physical therapist or your doctor. But if you want a practice that you might be able to do in your knee immobilizer, I wanted to offer one up. As a disclaimer, this practice is not a substitute for medical advice that you get from your doctor, your surgeon, your physical therapist. So make sure that you're following your protocols. But I wanted to offer up something that I think is a little hard to find out there on the internet, and maybe give you some things to do that aren't only quad sets or the couple of other things that oftentimes we get that are really, really focused on the knee itself and maybe not on the rest of your body. You'll notice that I'm not wearing a knee immobilizer. I've had 6 knee surgeries on this knee, and I wore a knee immobilizer after 5 of them. Okay, so I have spent a lot of time in a knee immobilizer, but also I ceremoniously rid myself of the immobilizers after I no longer need them, in hopes that I don't have another knee surgery. That didn't work several times, but for now, I don't have one. I do have this knee brace that I wear when when I'm walking, running, things like that. And this one does bend, but at least it'll kind of give you a sense of which side is the surgical side. And I'm using it as a reminder to not bend this knee and pretend like it's in an immobilizer. So one of the nice things about an immobilizer is, I admit, I don't think there are a lot of nice things about them. They are generally kind of ill-fitting and bulky and all of the things. But they do provide sort of like cushion and padding, and they kind of let you move your from your hip a little bit easier and things like that. So there can be some benefits to practicing in it. The struggle is that you can't bend your knee. And it turns out that a lot of things are easier when you can. So hopefully this practice will give you some nice things to do, but also some tips about how to be more mobile. And one thing is, when I was in my knee immobilizer, it took quite a long time before I could squeeze my quad, do a quad set, lift, and turn. Now, eventually, when you can do that, that's how you want to move around. You want to do quad set, lift, and move. Because when you're doing that, you're giving your quad something to do. But before that, one of the ways that I would get around it is when I'm sitting up, I'll hook my other foot, my non-surgical foot, under my calf, kind of like my Achilles tendon, lift, and spin this way. Okay? It's awkward, but it did the trick, usually. And, if you have your stretch strap or a yoga strap, then now look at me right now. You got to have a certain amount of flexibility at times to get that foot looped. So however you happen to be getting your foot looped, do it that way. But I also want to give you some things that you can do without a strap in case you cannot get your foot looped. Sometimes it's painful to reach that far, I know. So you may not be able to get your foot looped, and I want to make sure that I give you some ways to try and move without that. So the under the calf hook is one that I use quite a bit to move my leg around. Or the lift my butt up and scooch. Okay, you might have already figured all those out. All right, the other things that I have like a little yoga blanket and a yoga bolster because I practice a lot of yoga. You might have a couple of pillows, you might have a blanket or something, but yeah, a couple of pillows might be nice too. All right, and then we'll start lying down. So see if you can lie flat. If it is just killing your back, way too uncomfortable, you can put something underneath your upper back and your head, and you'll be kind of lifted up. So you can absolutely do that, or you can have a wedge or something if you need to. But if you can lie flat and give yourself this elongation across the front of the body, that can be really nice, especially when you're trying to recover from surgery. And if you need to bend your non-surgical side, that can sometimes relieve the back stuff that can be cranky. And so as you lie down, at first, just breathe. And if you do nothing else, breathe and notice your breathing. And the effects of that on your nervous system, on your lungs after potentially having had a surgery or having an injury. And even the effects on your musculoskeletal system just from moving all those tissues around. So your rib cage attaches to your spine. And a lot of the muscles and tissues that go around your rib cage or attach to your rib cage also attach to your shoulders, your neck. It's all interconnected here. And even here, your hip flexors, if you think about, your diaphragm here, right at the base of your rib cage that goes up and down as you breathe, your diaphragm kind of intersects with the very top of your hip flexor muscle, one of your main hip flexor muscles anyway. And so breathing can even have an impact on that muscle, which can get really cranky when you're lugging around a knee immobilizer and not putting a lot of weight on one leg. Now let's add in a little bit here. As you inhale, let your arms come out to the side and then make them like snow angels, where you sweep them up and overhead and then sweep them back down. And go nice and slow. You can do this one breath, inhaling up and exhaling down, or you might just take a couple of breaths in each snow angel. Especially if you find a spot that you want to kind of linger in for a moment, if you feel a nice stretch. And at the end of your next exhale, bring your hands up and interlace them. Now, I will say the other thing you can do here is use your strap and have your hands further apart. So if you interlace your hands and you notice that it just feels too tight or your shoulders get cranky, use a strap and hold it. In case you don't have a strap, you're gonna interlace your hands and imagine you're pulling them apart. And as you inhale, reach your arms overhead, slide your armpits up toward your ears. And as you exhale, bring your hands down and forward, kind of towards your feet. So you can do that and just breathe as you go. But if you can, start to add your legs in here. So if you can do a little quad set, like squeeze the top of your thigh to whatever degree you can tolerate. And as you reach overhead, from the front of your hip, from your pelvis,
reach through the sole of your foot, like you're going to make your leg longer. And then when you bring your arms up, relax that leg and then switch, do the other side. Inhale, reach overhead, stretch from your pelvis all the way through the sole of your foot, and release. One more on each side like that. And on your next inhale, both legs, reach your feet away from your arms. Hold. Breathe. And then as you exhale, release your arms. Just let them kind of float down to your sides or maybe out in a T. Relax your legs. At the end of your next exhale, interlace your hands again or grab your strap again. This time as you inhale, kind of prepare. As you exhale, you're going to lift your head and chest and start to reach over to the right. So I'm actually going to try and roll my torso over and twist as far toward my right shoulder as I can. So I'm kind of pulling on my top arm. And then I inhale, come back to center. Exhale, go the other way. I kind of follow my hands with my head. I end up lifting my head to help me reach over. My legs are staying upright. And I inhale, come back to center. And so again, you can go side to side, one breath, one movement. Or you might pause for a breath or two as you're stretching over. The next time you're back to center, reach your arms overhead, reach your legs forward. Inhale, and as you exhale, release. Now bend your non-injured side. And I'm gonna lift my hips and put my hands kind of underneath my butt here. And that's just gonna help me as I reach my leg forward, that's gonna help me sit up. You could also kind of roll sideways to sit up, but that's one way that I would sit up with my immobilizer. So as I'm sitting up, again, it might be that sitting up straight is like too much stretching through that area, especially depending on the what surgery or injury you have. So you can lean back a little bit onto your hands. You also just might feel like you want support, and so you can sit up against a wall or like a couch that's not going to move. Okay, and so we'll start off here. We'll do a couple of ankle movements here. So start to point your toes and then pull them back towards you. And you can make ankle circles. And do both sides, because your brain likes to mirror and match. So when you do things on your non-surgical side or your non-injured side, then your brain is more likely to try and match how that feels. So like that range of motion and that kind of muscle engagement when you're doing both sides. Okay, bring that back to center. Now pull your toes toward you a little bit and quad set. Again, do it on both sides. So squeeze the top of your thigh like you're drawing your kneecaps up. It might hurt. And this is one of those times where you breathe and convince yourself that that pain is a useful pain, and then relax. And now quad set again. Imagine you're going to try and press the back of your knee down enough to where your heels lift just a little bit. But this does not have to be your maximum effort where you're like short of breath. Hold your quad set and twist to your right. See if you can bring your left hand outside of your right knee. So you could be leaning back or you could be upright, but have a nice straight spine. Hold that quad set if you can. And then release, come back through center, relax your quad set. And then after about, 10 seconds or so, quad set again, twist to your left. Hold, breathe. Release, come back to center. This is how I made my quad sets more interesting. I would try and quad set while I did other stuff. Okay, so you can do that exact same thing again. Quad set, twist to the right, quad set, twist to the left. You can also try something a little bit different. You can quad set, twist to the right, and then walk out to the right. So I'm holding my quad set and then I'm just seeing how much I can walk my hands, especially my left hand. I'm trying to walk it out to the right. Admittedly, I find it very awkward to quad set in this position, so it could feel interesting. And then bring it back to center. Okay, relax your quad set, pause. You might do a little chest lift here, squeezing your shoulder blades toward one another. And then let's go again. Quad set, twist to your left, or try and walk your hands out to the left. Especially, just kind of crawl your right hand out. And then gently come back to center. Release your quad set. Do a little chest opener. Okay. Now, quad set, keep that and press your heels down into the ground. So in your mind, you're going to combine the chest opener with a quad set with a hamstring set or a gluteal set. It's a combination, right? So in my mind, I'm going to do this, okay? In your body, maybe not so much, but you engage those muscles. Take a breath and relax, okay? Now from here, I'm either going to try and quad set, move my leg, if you're to that portion of the program, or I might loop my leg and help myself move it, or I might keep my surgical side still. I'll demonstrate this over here, but move the other leg so that I have a wider stance. Now this isn't going to be my widest, okay? I'm not going for like maximum stretching here, but I'm going to come right here, and now I'm going to do ankle circles again. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm changing the angle of my hip. And this time as I do ankle circles, I can first just try and move my ankle. So my kneecaps stay facing upward, and I'm moving my ankles themselves. Then I'm going to try and add my hips onto that. So now I'm going to imagine that my toes and my kneecaps are attached to one another so that when I roll out, I'll roll my kneecaps and my toes out. And then I'm going to point my toes and roll everything in. So as I do, I'm doing ankle circles, but I'm adding my hips into that. Roll out, point the toes, roll in, pull them back. Roll out, point my toes, roll in, pull them back. And then switch directions. And you might find that rolling in one or both directions is very small on your immobilized side compared to the other, just based on
You can think about it like, after your knee has had surgery or an injury, everything's going to be really, really sensitive. So all movements that you're not doing regularly might feel painful. But by practicing them, you can get your tissues to start the process of adapting to all these different movements again, which is going to help so much when you're getting into standing and walking and trying to bend your knee and all of that. Okay, once you've done a little bit of that, let's do a twist again. So again, you can lean back and twist to the right, or you can lean forward depending on how much stretching of the tissues your protocol calls for. Like if you're not supposed to be doing a lot of hamstring stretching and this feels really stretchy, then you want to lean back. Does that make sense? And then if it doesn't matter how much hamstring stretching you do and you're like, oh, it feels so good to lean forward, you can do that. Okay, we'll twist to the right. I'm in a quad set too. Why not? Come back to center, relax the quad set. Twist to the left, quad set. So again, now I'm quad setting with my leg at a different angle, which can be interesting. Release, come back to center. And from here, open your chest, quad set, and then press your heels, calves toward the ground as though you were going to lift your hips up. And you just do that as much as you can tolerate. Maybe get a little sensation, maybe you get a little shake, then release. Good. All right. Now, of course, you can pause me and do another round of that a little bit wider, right? It would be twist, twist. You do your ankle circles and your hip circles, okay? So like you can go from straight ahead to wider, 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 and you can work this way if you find some use out of that. I think it's super helpful to work at as many different angles as you're able to. And so it's just going to depend on where you are in your rehab as to kind of how many different angles you want to work at. But since we're going to go through a few things today, I don't know how much tolerance you have for one go around, but I want to give us, I want to move on. But if that's something that's really useful to you, like pause and do that thing. Okay, so now we're going to bring your legs back straight. Stretch your arms forward. Now, what I'll say is if leaning back is what you need to be doing right now, then for this one, you'll want to lean back against the wall a little bit here, because what we're essentially going to be doing is like a roll down. So you can, for the first part, you can lean against a wall, roll down, and then roll up and do your best, almost like cat and cow in yoga, where you're kind of rolling like this. But the other thing I'll say is that you could also do this from the bottom up, which I'll demonstrate in a minute. So if you're like, I can't sit upright like that, then lie down and I'll demonstrate the next part in just a second. So from the top down, we do cat pose, quad set, roll. Now, you might find a point where you go, ow, 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 because it's going to kind of fire up that whole front chain a little bit more. And so that might be your boundary, where you come back up, where you come down and go, ooh, I got bonus quad. And then you come back up. Okay? So you might kind of be limited by the feeling in your kneecap. You might, if you can keep your heels down, you might be able to roll all the way down, or after you do a few of those, you could lie down and come from the bottom up. So essentially in the end, we're going to be able to go all the way up, all the way down.
But the way that I get to that is, if that's not something you can do right now, I do some from the top down, and then I do some from the bottom up. So I would inhale with my arms back, and then as I exhale, I lift my head and chest, curl, quad set, because I don't want to lift my legs, and I curl, curl, curl as much as I can, and then I come back down. So I'm just doing my best to roll up and roll down. And if I can, roll up without lifting my legs and get all the way up. Then you can go up and down and do a few rounds of this with your breath. This is a great way if you're sort of already squeezing your quad to get a little bonus firing, but also to kind of get your abdominals going, to give you a little mobility through your spine. Good stuff. Do a couple more of whatever you're trying. And then from here, make your way down onto your back. So here at first, what we're gonna do is take your left, take your non-immobilized leg and see if you can strap it. It's okay if you've just kind of got your two ends of the strap wrapped around it. I just have a loop because I like loops. I think loops are nice, but your strap might be different. I even like to hold my loop like this. I make it bigger and then get where I can hold it. So obviously your immobilized leg is going to have to just be extended along the ground, which might mean, depending on how flexible you are just in general, you might have to have this leg kind of forward, or it might be able to be more up like this. It just depends on your own body. And what we're gonna do here is, again, now the bottom leg, you want to think about like we were doing those hip rotations, where your kneecap and your toes are kind of going in the same direction. And so I'm going to take my hand and my foot, like opposite handed foot, are in the strap. So I'm holding with my right hand, I have my left foot in the strap. Yours might be the opposite, because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my foot out to the left, because it's my left foot. So I'm going to open it out to the side, but I'm using my opposite hand to help control that descent. And then I'm going to come back to center, and now I go the opposite way. So I'm going to switch hands and start to reach, like I'm pushing my foot into that strap. Now I might just kind of scissor my leg across. I might start to roll toward the outer right hip, outer right thigh. And that's going to mean turning your kneecap and toes of that surgical side. So you might find that that's something that you can do. You might find that that is something that your leg does not want to do, but just think about that. Keep that in mind, because that's the idea. And so then we'll just go back and forth. You open it, and then you switch hands and reach across, whether it's scissoring or you reach so that you twist your torso, your hips, and roll toward the outer edge of that leg. Do a couple rounds like this. And so we're doing this in the non-immobilized side because it's probably bearing the brunt of the work. Okay, that's one reason. It's doing most of the weight bearing when you're walking around. It's probably what's doing all the work getting you like on and off the toilet, things like that. And so we want to give this leg some love, but also it's that mirroring thing. So we do a little bit on this side. Now I'm gonna release that leg. And here's the thing. I'm gonna sit up now. Depending on your comfort level with pulling your leg up in the air, you may be able to loop that leg. And then as you lie down, you might be able to lift it up. And if you feel like you feel comfortable with it sort of being up in the air and you holding it, that's great. The other way to do this though is to scooch a little closer to a wall. Unless you are very comfortable with your legs straight up in the air, like you don't want to be right up next to the wall because you want, I'll just show you over here. Like you've got to know at what angle you are comfortable having this leg. So the further away you are from the wall, the more angle you're going to get. And the closer you are to the wall, the more vertical that leg gets. So it's just going to depend on you. But you can finagle to get your foot up onto a wall. And I usually use my strap and my quad set. And then I finagle my way around. So you could have your leg resting on the wall as you do this whole thing. And if I do that, what I like to do is kind of drop my opposite knee open as if I were kind of sitting cross-legged. So I'm here. You could also keep it bent up toward the ceiling. And so this just gives you a little more support. Now it also makes it a little harder to slide, but that can actually be nice for muscular engagement, right? So I'll demonstrate it both ways, but essentially we're doing the same thing. It's just that with this side, you may find that it feels really different or your range of motion needs to be different. So as I bring my strap into the opposite hand, what I might be doing is pushing my foot into the strap and getting a little engagement in my hip muscles and squeezing my quad and then just seeing how far I can lower it without getting that fear response, that shortness of breath. And then I bring it back up to center. And so this may be, and I'll show you like how small this movement is. It may literally be like a little tiny bit. Come back through center and a little tiny bit the other way. And that's really okay. What I'll say is when you're reaching across, if you can, just like we did in the very beginning, from your hip through the sole of your foot, if you can kind of lift and stretch, that'll be really nice for your low back and your hip and your pelvis because you're sort of, that's going to be a really important element for like walking and things like that that isn't getting utilized right now. And so again, I can go, and you might be able to go more open. It just depends on you, your leg, your surgery. But when you reach across, whatever you do, from your pelvis through the sole of your foot, lift and stretch. That's really one of the key things that we're doing here. And if you're supposed to be really avoiding hamstring or inner thigh adductor engagement, like with certain meniscal injuries or sometimes MCL stuff, you then don't do the open part because you'll have to, that'll be harder to close back up. And once you've done a little bit of that, you can release and make your way back down. And for me, sitting up as I lower my leg down was always really helpful, but you could find other ways of doing that for sure. Okay, so honestly, doing all of that could be a lot, especially, and you might have to decide like, I need to leave out parts of that, and you can do what you can do and leave out other parts.
But for me, one of the absolute best things that I could do for myself when I was in my knee immobilizer was to be able to turn over onto my stomach. That's one of the things that I try and do as soon as humanly possible. And that can be really challenging in the knee immobilizer. I had never figured out a strappy way to do that or anything like that. But I figured out another trick. I have another video that explains that trick, but the next few things that we'll do are actually going to be on your stomach. I can't really think of a surgery where you can't particularly lay on your stomach, a knee surgery, because aside from just being able to get there safely and discomfort, because gravity is then going to be pulling your knee straight, which is great. But if you are feeling a lot of pain with straightening your knee, right, that's not going to be comfortable. But laying on your stomach can also be really helpful in working with that. So your knee immobilizer and all of the padding and stuff that's generally there, I think honestly helps keep the incision pretty safe. A couple things that I would do would be, I might lay on a bed to make it squishier. I might put a blanket underneath me to make it squishier, things like that. I am going to use my blanket, or a pillow will work that you can kind of fold. And I can either just kind of make my blanket small, or I can make it a roll. And I'm going to use it in a little bit, and I'll show you how. But in order to get on your stomach, you can do it a couple of ways. I might be able to use my kneecap toes in the same direction to roll onto that side. Then the key is you have to point your foot to get on your stomach, okay? And a lot of people can do it that way. For me, there were a couple of surgeries, and then when I go back, I do the same thing. And I just try and keep that whole thing rolling as a unit. The key with that is just knowing when to point your foot, like when to point your toes. There were a couple of surgeries where no freaking way I could do that. It really hurt to roll on that side and did not like it. So the way that I roll over the other way is I use my non-surgical side. So I would hook my non-surgical foot underneath like the arch and the ball of my surgical side. And then I use that, so as I roll over, that's supporting me and I get to my side. Then once I'm on my side, I switch and I take that non-surgical foot to the top of my surgical foot. And then I use that to slow the descent as I roll to the ground. And so I could do it really slowly, and then I just take that foot out. And that's how I got to my stomach for quite a long time. And if it's like your first time to be on your stomach, it might just be, laying on your stomach is enough. And you can support your head on your arms and just breathe. Another thing that I really like to do on my stomach is do quad sets, but they're kind of different because I can gently push the tops of my feet into the ground and imagine that I'm going to lift my kneecaps up away from the ground. So for me, it's like a gravity resisted quad set, but I also kind of get an element of that foot push just really gently, and that can be really nice. So I'm pushing the top of my foot, and I just bent my knee, but I'm pushing the top of my foot down into the ground and then trying to squeeze my kneecaps up away from the ground using my quads. I'm going to hold that 10 seconds or so and relax. Let's do a few like that. And the real key here is between every quad set, you got to relax all the way and really feel that difference between the contraction and the relaxation, because a muscle that can't relax also can't contract fully. So you got to be able to have both. And I find that it can be really difficult to relax all the way and then re-engage. So make sure you're working with that. And then you can do a few more like that. I'm going to work with getting some relief to my hip flexors, my abdominal muscles, and my guts. So I'm going to use my roll or just my little fold or a little pillow, and I'm essentially going to put it underneath my belly. So the trick with it is actually getting it under there with your knee not being able to bend. But I actually try and get it really right into my abdomen, like belly button area is what I think, or maybe even a little below my belly button. But I want it to like push up into my abdomen. This might be uncomfortable, and so you might have to make your little roll small. Might need to just be a fold. Might need to just be a little thing. I'm gonna try and relax my abdomen and then lay back down here. And then I just breathe, and my whole goal is to relax my belly and let that roll push up into my abdomen as much as it can. My hip flexors are back there, and so what I'm doing here essentially is creating this like disturbance, like some pressure to the tissues. We'll call it, it's called deformation of the tissues, right? Like you push on your skin and it changes shape. And so I'm doing that. And then I'm asking my nervous system to allow it, to say, okay, you're okay, soften. And one of the things this can help with is digestion, which can be a really huge benefit if you've had a surgery, especially. But it can also be really nice for hip flexors. And just for calming your nervous system. And so you can just breathe like that. You could bend your non-immobilized side, and you can just kind of rock that foot from side to side like a windshield wiper. And the idea is to just lie here and work with it until you notice that the sensation changes. Like, oh, I don't feel quite as much discomfort in that area. It must have softened. And once that happens, then I'm going to take that away. And then I can work with a couple of things here. I'm going to bring my hands back by my rib cage. And so it's okay if the heel of my hands is up a little bit, just for my wrist purposes. My forehead is going to come down, or I'm at least going to look straight at the ground. And now I'm going to make shoulder circles. I'm going to circle my shoulders toward my ears, toward the ceiling so that my shoulder blades squeeze, toward my hips, and then down toward the ground and back toward my ears. So I'm making these slow circles here. And the next time I squeeze my shoulders up toward the ceiling, I'm going to hold that. Now I'm going to quad set on my non-immobilized side and see if I can lift that leg up off the ground, keeping my knee really straight. Keep my shoulders lifted.
Then lower that leg. Same thing on my immobilized side. Quad set, my toes press down, my kneecap lifts. And then I'm going to see, okay, can I lift my leg up? Even if I don't actually lift it, even if it's just I'm engaging some muscles, that's fine. Shoulders lift, leg maybe lifts, lower back down, relax, switch. Lower down, relax, switch, quad set, then lift. Lower back down and switch. Quad set, then lift. Lower back down and switch. Quad set, lift. Lower back down. Maybe now, both legs at the same time. That's just for fun. Lower back down, crawl your hands forward. Reach, 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 really crawl them out. Stretch your arms forward, reach your legs in the opposite direction. Take your forehead in the direction of the ground so that your back of your neck gets really long. Breathe. And then relax that. From here, bring your forehead onto your left hand and start to take your right arm out to the right. And so it's not really going to go straight sideways. It's going to come a little bit at a forward angle. And I'm going to start to crawl my hand out and away. And then I'm going to turn my head away. So I'm turning my head to the left as I crawl my right arm out. And I might feel some nice stretching in my right shoulder, arm. I can absolutely keep crawling that hand out and roll over. Like I'm kind of bending my left knee. So for instance, if that's your immobilized side, you wouldn't bend it. You could just kind of roll a little bit, but I'm really not going to do a lot of rolling here. It's more about the crawling out. And then I turn my head the opposite way, and that's how I get that stretch to my chest. And release. Come back through center and switch sides. Crawl your left arm out. And then you could turn your head the opposite way and keep crawling. Once you find like, okay, I feel some stuff happening, that's good enough. And release, bring that back through center. From here, you might come up onto your elbows, lift your chest. I like to squeeze where my butt and my thigh come together, squeeze that toward the ground. You can come down and then you can do that a couple more times, or you can come up higher, just depends on your body, right? And what it's gonna tolerate. This is another good place to quad set, kind of tops of the feet push down, kneecaps lift up. One more. Breathe, and then from here, I'm gonna roll back over. And so if I'm rolling over, the way that I was demonstrating, I put my non-immobilized foot underneath the top of my immobilized foot. And that's what I use to help me turn to my side. Then I switch. Non-immobilized foot goes to the bottom of my immobilized foot. And that's what I use to control my descent as I come down. And then I adjust myself because usually I was in an awkward position, so I would adjust using my other leg. Okay. And now from here, we're just gonna rest. So you can take your pillows or your blanket, kind of whatever you have. And I think it's really nice to get my chest a little bit lifted, and the rest of me supported, and then to rest like this. And so it's not super important exactly where your pillows or whatever you've got underneath your back. You just find the place that feels comfortable enough for you. And again, you don't have to be lifted, or you could be lifted more like on a wedge of some kind. The other way that you could rest, if you are able to, see how I'm doing this? I'm using my under the calf lift. The other thing that I might do is rest with my legs up the wall. So if up the wall is a comfortable position for you, you could rest like that. And that can be such a nice way, especially if you get a lot of swelling and you want to get a little elevation of your legs, or if your low back gets really tender, sometimes this is a really nice way to rest. However you're resting, see if you can slow your breathing. And this time, not by necessarily making your breaths deeper, but actually slowing down the pace. So you're taking nice, gentle breaths, just at a slow pace. If you have the time to rest longer, please do. And whatever it is that you're ready to come out, do it slowly. If you want to see how I get down off the wall without a strap, I use the under the calf method, and I slowly turn. Let's not do that. But however you're making your way back up to sitting, see if you can figure out what sitting position feels available to you. For me, I always just liked bending my non-surgical leg. That helped me sit up straighter. You might have one leg kind of hanging over the edge of a bed or something, right? It could be nice. And then pause here. Take a long, slow, this time deep inhale, trying to draw that air down low into your lungs. Hold at the top, and then see if you can draw a little more air in. Let it go. Let's do that one more time. Draw air in. See if you can expand the lowest lobes of your lungs. Pause at the top of your inhale and inhale a little more. Let it go. Thank you for joining me. I hope this has given you some things to do when your knee is immobilized. And let me know if you have any questions. Take care.